Great. I'm excited. It is Giving Tuesday, and we are here with the great Steve Nasche, who is the founder of Catholic Mission Trips. Steve, I'm sure I love the story. I'm sure everybody else would like to learn a little bit about how Catholic Mission Trips came to be. What was the vision there?
Yeah, so Catholic Mission Church started really when I was a youth director at St. Mark's Church in Plano, Texas. It was a suburb in North Dallas area, and the kids there, were upper middle class, for the most part, and I wanted to give them a different experience. I would hear oftentimes like during Christmas time. Now we're in the holiday season. It would be like, "Mom, I need a new guitar," or "Mom, I need, a new video game," or whatever it was that they were asking for, and they kept saying the word "need," and I would try to correct them oftentimes and say, "Well, no, you want a new guitar, you want a new video game. You don't need them." And so it got me thinking, and I really at one point just decided I need to give these kids like a complete culture shock. I want to take them somewhere different that they've never seen before, that they could see life in a completely different way from their suburban life, in Plano, Texas. And so we embarked on going to Mexico, and I called around for many dioceses and different Catholic organizations to find someone who would help us with this Mexico trip, and eventually ran into the Missionaries of Jesus. This was Sister Norma is the one who got in touch with me, and she's down there on the border. She's the director of Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Brownsville, and she pointed me down there and said, "Hey, come on down. We'll help you. We'll help you find a work project for you." And so we took 13 faithful students that first mission trip down to South Texas or to Mexico. We raised $3,000, and the project that we had been allotted was to help build a new chapel called San Miguel. This was our first chapel that we were working on. So we raised our paltry $3,000, and we went down there, and we were so naive and so young, we didn't know really anything. We just went because we thought it would be a good thing for our students and us as well. And we got down there with our $3,000. We thought it would be like you go to Home Depot and you pay, for your materials, and they load them on the truck and you bring them home, And so we went to the carpentry store, the hardware store, and we paid for the sand and the gravel and the cinder block and the wire to start this construction project. And we went back to the construction site and we waited there for 5 days. And then on the day that we were leaving to come back to the United States was the day that the supplies arrived. So yeah, it was quite an ordeal. But what we did that first year is we made rosaries with the kids. We went and had lunch in the families' homes, and it was still a great communal experience and cultural experience for our teenagers. So then we went to year two. We took about 30 teenagers now. It over doubled in size. And we raised the money again. We raised around $6,000 this year. And in year two, we went and bought the materials before we got down there. We learned our lesson, And so then, we took our 30 kids. And when we got down there, we found out that the community had used those materials that came the year prior, the day we left. Sure. And they started to build the chapel, and the chapel was about as high as my knee, about 2-3 feet at most, and it was cinder block perimeter and dirt in the middle. All it was this line of cinder blocks that kind of outlined where the chapel would be. And anyhow, long story short of it, the kids were like, "Oh, look at what they've done. We raised $6,000. We can get it up, at least higher, almost up to the roof." And they were all excited about that. And they kept saying so that they can start using the church, maybe it'll take us another year and we'll, then they can have their church ready. And the ladies in the community there were asked, "What do you mean use the church?" And the kids were like, "Well, when we have to finish the walls and we get the roof on and we get the floor done and we get the windows and doors in, then you can use the church, and they said, "Well, we already use the church." And our kids were shocked. This isn't even a church. They said, like it's a line of bricks, And they said, "We have mass here every Sunday. We have confessions here. We have catechesis here. We have first communion classes." Like this is our church. And the kids at that point were just really, really blown away, at that concept. Something that they had never seen or heard of or even thought of before, even considered. And so after that year, then they went back, and that's when it really took off. They were just so excited about, like, we've got to raise more money. We've got to help them finish this church. We've got to get more teens down here. And we doubled in size again. We took 60 our next year, and we raised around $12,000 the next year. So we kept our fundraising kept growing as this went on, and then, okay, so then the 12,000 went to, we raised 20,000 the next year, and we took 90 students the next year. And then at that point, we started doing 2 mission trips a summer. We took one in June and one in July because we couldn't fit everyone, into the one mission trip. 90 was too many for the facilities that we had.
Sure.
And then at that point, we started bringing other churches from the Dallas Diocese with us down to Mexico, some of their youth ministers, to kind of check out what we were doing because they heard about our mission trips. And that's where the concept of Catholic mission trips kind of began. What I ran into was all the youth ministers that I brought down with me to Mexico on our mission trips all wanted to be a part of our mission trips, but none of them wanted to plan and implement a mission trip by themselves. They wanted to just join ours. They didn't want to deal with buying the supplies or finding the housing or the work projects or the carpenters or the, foremans and the food and the crossing the border and the travel. They just wanted to sign their kids up and come with us. Yeah. And that is ultimately where,
as a former youth minister myself, I appreciate that. Like, logistics never been a priority of mine, right? So doing all the things that you just laid out there with getting the food and the contractors and the building projects, that's where it gets quite challenging for us youth ministers.
Yeah, indeed. And so that's where we kind of decided, and I prayed about it, and I thought, well, maybe there's a need in the church for an organization that just plans mission trips and people can just sign up, And so in 2008 was the first year that I built a website, or 2007-ish or 8-ish. And that's when, I just put a website out there. I didn't do any advertising or anything. I just put the website out to see what would happen. And in 2008, by about month 6 of that website being up, we had a full summer booked, of mission trips. And then that's when I knew that we had, a need in a church, for an organization that does this, And so then that's where it officially became an organization, 2008. And then we got our nonprofit status somewhere around 2010-ish. And then, it's been going ever since, so. Yeah. So we do about 20, 25 or 30 mission trips a year, roughly. And, been doing that for the last, several years. And that's kind of where we've landed, So sure. It's been a great experience, a great ride. All the people that we've met along the way, all the missionaries that have been a part of CMT. And one thing that we really strive to emphasize with people that are on our mission trips, is the celestial and the divine plan, that we really reiterate and want them to know that, they're not here by mistake, that God has called them to this moment in history, to this time in history, that no one in the whole human history, the whole realm of human history has everyone existed that is exactly like themselves, and as unique as themselves. And we try to tell them that you're placed here for a reason, and it's not just to live and die. That's not your reason. Your reason is to be, his living witness in the world, to be his witness of hope in the world, to bring his witness of love to the world. And you were called in this moment to be that witness in this moment of history. So what are you going to do with it, right? And so you're here on this mission trip. How are you going to live that out? You already said yes. You came on the mission trip, but how are you going to be his witness of love while you're here? And then also when you go back home again, And so, just trying to tell people and help them to know that that it's not by mistake that they're here. They were called here. They were chosen to be here. And they are his chosen witnesses of love in the world, which is a pretty substantial and profound thing to think about, that God chose you to be his witness. It harkens back to Isaiah when, God is saying, who will I send? And this is in the 6th chapter of Isaiah, who will I send? And then, Isaiah speaks up and says, send me, here I am,
right?
I'm ready to do your will, right? And it's a song we
Yeah.
sing in the Catholic Church a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's a great moment. Who will I send? Here I am. And that's how we are as missionaries. We're
Yeah.
answering that call.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now we're going to be talking again later tonight, but tell us real quick, kind of how you've seen the growth and maybe what is a memorable story. You've seen a lot. You've seen mission leaders enter religious life. You've seen some of the recipients who have really been in need, in desperate need, in what Catholic Mission Trips has been able to do for them, and then the missionaries themselves. So tell us, is there a story that you always carry around with you that you're like, when I think of Catholic Mission Trips, I think of this story?
Yeah, and this was one of those early mission trips. This is a story I've told many times, but it's still one of my favorite. We had started building. This was now I think our third chapel so we started with the one San Miguel, and we did another one, and this was San Jose, St. Joseph's. And this place that we chose had a small tin chapel, really small, maybe could seat 15 people, and the community wanted a larger chapel. It was too small for what they were doing, and they were growing, and so we decided to build them a new one, And what we did is we dug a trench for the foundation, for the wall, around their current chapel. So there was this trench that went around their current tin chapel, that little small building. And they wanted to keep that chapel there until the other church had gotten finished so people could still come and pray. And what they did is they put a bridge, like a piece of wood, over top of this trench so people from the community could come and walk across the trench of the new church, right, and into the old tin chapel. And so anyhow, we were digging this one day, and this was like, pickaxes and shovels, really hard, laborious work, and it was a really hot day. There wasn't much wind, and our teams got pretty exhausted early because it was just digging, and that's just hard work, right? And so they were stressed to us. The concrete is going to be here by noon, so we have to get this trench done by noon. And so we were swinging these pickaxes as hard as we could. We were just physically exhausted. We would get in teams and we'd pass the pickaxe. You'd pick as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and when you get tired, you pass it to the next guy, and we keep the pickaxe going.
Yeah.
So we're doing this component of it, and some of the teams got tired and sat off to the side, and they said, well, what else can we do? We're kind of tired. And I said, well, you can go door to door and you can kind of see what the needs are in the community. So they got a group of them, and they went door to door and just started knocking on doors to see if they could help in any way. The rest of us stayed, and we continued to work to make sure the trench was completely finished, Well, about 30 minutes, an hour passes, maybe an hour or so, and I'm there at the church, and I'm in this trench trying to make it perfect, just completely exhausted. And I see our teenagers and the adults coming down the street back to the chapel, and they have this old man in a chair, and they're carrying this old man, down the street. And when you see this, what are you first thinking? As a youth minister, I'm thinking, please don't drop him. And I'm seeing these guys come, and I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world is happening here? And so they bring this man to the chapel, and they bring him across that wood that they laid to make a bridge across the trench. And I didn't know anything about this man or his story or anything, but the moment that he crossed that bridge, the moment that man went across the bridge to where where the old church was, or where we were building the new church, this cold wind came down, like a wind, like a coldness, like when you open the freezer, right? When you open the freezer, this you feel the cold of the freezer come out, right? And so this cold wind came down upon us and circled and swirled around our work site, and we were hot and exhausted. And we all, in the moment, were like, praise God, it was just a moment of just cooling us down. It was so great. But still at this moment, we didn't know anything about this man or his story, and we hadn't even put the two together yet, this event. But what did happen is we all started talking about it seemed like a supernatural event because and we started even having the discussion, is there a thing in science where a polar vortex of wind can come down from the upper atmosphere down, like a tornado of cold wind, and so we're trying to like rationalize and figure out what just happened, and we couldn't figure it out at the moment, and we didn't know what happened. It was just so bizarre. Well, then later we found out about this man. So this group of teenagers and their adults went out and they knocked on the door at this one house, and the roof was flapping in, there, and the sunlight was coming in. There was holes in the roof. There was, problems with the house, and they asked him, "Is there anything that we can do here?" And they were thinking like, repair your house, is there anything that we can do to help? And she said, "No, I want you to go talk to my husband. And he's laying on the bed." And so he had been paralyzed on half his body. He had a stroke. And so he was bedridden. And this was the old man that they encountered. And so they asked the old man, "Is there anything that we can do for you or help in any way?" And through a translator, he said, all I want to do is go to mass. He said, I've had this stroke 2 years ago. I haven't been to mass. And so the kids were like, "Well, we got a priest." and so they were like, "You want to go right now?" and the guy said yes, and they got him out of the bed, and they put him in a chair, and they carried him down to a priest. And so when he crossed over into that chapel, our priest there, Father Salvador Guzman, heard his confession, said mass for him, and he received the Eucharist for the first time in a couple of years. And so that was a really profound moment, and so then the ending of this story is a year later. When we're down there for a week, we can't build the entire chapel. We're just there for 5 days of work, right? So we do what we can do, and we raised enough money to where they could finish it after us. And so the next year we went down to visit, and that they were dedicating that chapel because it had been a year now, and they had finished the chapel, and it was all dedicated, and they had it decorated so beautifully with flowers and streamers of flowers. It was just so beautiful. And then who did I see when I went into the dedication of the chapel? Was that old man. He was in a wheelchair now. The community knew about him. They had gotten him what he needed, and he was there at mass in the front, and he couldn't talk. But I went up and said hello to him. I grabbed his hand, and he clutched me with his one hand that he could, and he clutched my arm, and he just intently looked into my eyes, and tears welled up in his eyes. He didn't speak, but I knew the gratitude that he had from us as a group, and it all stemmed from teenagers and youth saying, what can we do? How can we? What can we do now? I guess
it reminds me of the story of the paralytic who, his friends carried him and then lowered him down to Jesus. That is incredible. I share with people all the time, Steve, that this is part of how Catholic mission trips came about. You're down there, like you said, 5 days. You do what you could, right? But you always realize, what kind of impact could we have if we were in an area for 3 weeks, a month and a half? And that's really one of the things that Catholic Mission Trips does. We try to stay in some of these communities, do some larger projects, longer projects. In fact, we have some seminarians in February who are going to Kentucky for 3 weeks to build a house. So we're always looking for an opportunity to make a huge impact by being in a community for a few weeks or a month. Is that correct?
Yes.
Kind of the...
Yes, indeed, and we tell our missionaries and that come and work for us. We have an old cliche, sort of like word phrase that we use, but it's true, and we say it's more important to build the church than it is to build a church, right? And so we want our missionary work not to be solely focused on the project. Sure. That we lose sight of who we're doing the project for and the reason why we're doing the project to begin with, right? And one thing that we encountered when we were in Mexico in the beginning was we found an engineer that was going to help us with the design of the chapels that we were building. And the first year, he seemed really cold towards us, and I don't know what it was, but all of us kind of got it. And maybe he's just a different sort of guy, and he's just more professional and whatever. And so he didn't seem to like us as much, or he didn't express it, and that's okay. So, but we did all kind of notice it, you know. Well, then by year 2 and year 3, he opened up, and he opened up more and more. And then he had told us at one time, he said that, yeah, some missionaries come down and they take a bunch of pictures, and they, you know, get with the kids and they take pictures, and then they leave. And then they go back and raise money or whatever, and they say they're going to send this money down or whatever, and nothing happens, you know, and they leave, and they come and go and leave. And so he thought that we were going to be like one of those organizations that just came and left, you know, and they kind of viewed those types of groups negatively. You know, if you come in for 1 week and then you leave and you never come back again. And so, because they had been, I guess they perceived that they had been a sort of like used, you know, for their poverty to raise money, and then they didn't get any, you know, return of that, you know. And so we try to, in all of our locations, to really have a presence that goes beyond, you know, 1 week, you know, like, yeah, there are some places that we follow that are disaster related, right? You know, there are hurricanes or tornadoes. Sure. But even in those places, we try to stay, you know, multiple years, so that, you know, people know that we're invested in the community as well, and not just, you know, a one and done sort of missionary organization. You know, and so for the places that we've chosen, you know, Kentucky, New Mexico, South Texas, you know, Louisiana, these, you know, some of these places we've gone to for multiple years, you know.
Steve, I really appreciate your time. As always, this is a great conversation. Thank you for joining us on Giving Tuesday. And if you had one thing to say to potential donors, what would it be?
Yeah, I would just say to people that are considering donating or being a part of CMT, you know, like, unfortunately, money is a thing that we need to operate, right? And but the thing is, God calls many of us in many different ways, you know, and some people He is actually calling to be a part of our staff, a part of our team, and to be missionaries for us and to go. And some of us, we can say yes to that call and we can go, but others of us, we can't go. And so there's other ways that you can join our mission and be a part of our mission. We need you desperately. And there are people in the world who are desperate for CMT and for this sign of God's love in the world. You know, there are people that have lost hope, and they've lost even faith in God, and think, how can a God that loves the world leave me like this? And we go in and we show them in a way, by answering God's call, that He is real, that He does love them, and you know, that love is real and tangible, and they can experience it. And so when we go in, we've actually can see how people's faith has been enriched and invigorated, you know, and they've started to believe again. And so our missionaries can do that, but we can't do it without the financial support of our missionaries at home, you know. And so I would encourage you guys all, as missionaries at home, join us in our projects, in our direction, by the Holy Spirit, to be His living witness in the world. And you can be a part of the love and the joy that is shared in the world, you know, through CMT.
Awesome. Thanks again, Steve, and God bless you. And we'll talk to you later tonight.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks a lot.